The silk of my wedding dress clung to my skin like a second layer of lies. I stood in the bridal suite of the Grand Harbor Hotel, staring at my reflection in the floor-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. My hands trembled as I adjusted the veil for the 100th time, the delicate lace scratching against my cheeks. Outside, I could hear the murmur of 300 guests settling into their seats, the string quartet tuning their instruments, the rustle of expensive fabric and whispered gossip. I was 23 years old, and I was about to marry a man I didn't love. Marcus Whitmore, Harvard graduate, investment banker, my parents' golden choice. He had the right pedigree, the right connections, the right bank account. What he didn't have was my heart. What he didn't have was honesty. 3 weeks ago, I'd found the messages on his phone, a trail of infidelity that stretched back months, maybe longer. When I confronted him, he'd laughed. Actually laughed. "Everyone does it, Evelyn," he'd said, straightening his tie in our bathroom mirror. "You'll learn to look the other way. That's what marriages like ours are built on. Marriages like ours, transactions, arrangements, pretty cages with golden bars." My mother had been horrified when I threatened to call it off. "Do you have any idea what this will cost us?" she'd hissed, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my arm. "The deposits alone are $50,000. The humiliation will destroy our family's reputation. You will walk down that aisle, Evelyn Marie Ashford, and you will smile." So here I stood, smiling, dying inside. The door burst open, and my maid of honor, my cousin Rachel, rushed in, her champagne-colored dress swishing around her legs. "5 minutes," she announced, then stopped short when she saw my face. "Evie? Are you crying?" I touched my cheek. It came away wet with mascara-stained tears. "I can't do this." "What?" "I can't marry him, Rachel. I can't spend the rest of my life pretending to be happy while he—" My voice cracked. "While he does whatever he wants with whoever he wants." Rachel's expression softened. She crossed the room and took my hands in hers. "Then don't. My mother will never forgive me. Your mother isn't the one who has to sleep next to him every night for the next 50 years. She squeezed my fingers. "Evie, you've always done what everyone else wanted. Your parents chose your college, your major, your career path. Don't let them choose your husband, too." The weight of her words settled over me like a blanket. She was right. God, she was right. "What do I do?" I whispered. Rachel glanced at the door, then back at me. A conspiratorial smile tugged at her lips. "There's a service exit at the end of the hall. It leads to the kitchen loading dock. My car is parked 2 blocks away on 7th Street. She pressed her keys into my palm. "Go. But the guests—" "I'll handle it. I'll tell them you're feeling ill. Food poisoning. Something." She was already unzipping the back of my dress. "But you need to leave now before someone comes looking for you." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was insane. This was social suicide. This was freedom. The dress pooled at my feet in a mountain of ivory silk and broken dreams. Rachel handed me her spare clothes from her overnight bag, a simple black sundress and flat sandals. I changed in 30 seconds, my fingers shaking so badly I could barely tie the straps. Rachel grabbed my veil and tossed it onto the couch, then pulled me toward the door. "Go," she urged. "Run." And I did. The service hallway was dim and utilitarian, smelling of industrial cleaner and leftover catering food. My sandals slapped against the linoleum as I ran, my breath coming in short gasps. Behind me, I could hear the muffled sound of the wedding march beginning. In 2 minutes, my father would realize I wasn't there. In 5, chaos would erupt. I burst through the loading dock door into blinding afternoon sunlight. The July heat hit me like a physical wall, thick and oppressive. I blinked away spots and stumbled down the concrete steps, my legs unsteady beneath me. 7th Street. 2 blocks. I could make it. I ran. The city sidewalks blurred past me. Tourists with cameras, businessmen in suits, street vendors selling hot dogs and pretzels. Nobody looked twice at a woman running in a black dress, tears streaming down her face. This was New York. Everyone was running from something. I found Rachel's car exactly where she'd said, a beat-up Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. My hands shook as I unlocked it, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The air conditioning blasted hot air in my face. I cranked it to maximum and pulled into traffic without checking my mirrors. Where was I going? I had no plan, no destination. I just drove, merging onto the highway heading north, away from the hotel, away from Marcus, away from the life that had been suffocating me since birth. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, Mom calling. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Marcus. Then my father. Then Marcus again. I turned it off and threw it into the back seat. The highway stretched before me, an endless ribbon of asphalt and possibility. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I drove for 3 hours straight, barely conscious of where I was going. The gas gauge dropped steadily toward empty. My adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion that made my eyelids heavy and my reactions slow. I needed to stop, needed to rest, needed to figure out what the hell I was going to do with my life now. A road sign appeared. Crescent Bay, 10 miles. I'd never heard of it, which made it perfect. The exit ramp curved off the highway into dense forest. The landscape changed from urban sprawl to thick pine trees and rocky outcroppings. The road narrowed, becoming a 2-lane coastal highway that hugged dramatic cliffs overlooking the Atlantic. The ocean stretched out to my right, dark and churning beneath gathering storm clouds. Crescent Bay itself was small, a picturesque harbor town with a main street lined with seafood restaurants, tourist shops, and a single traffic light. Fishing boats bobbed in the marina. The air smelled of salt water and fried clams. It was the kind of place people came to forget about their problems. Perfect. I pulled into the parking lot of the first motel I saw, the Sea Breeze Inn, a weathered 2-story building with peeling blue paint and a flickering neon vacancy sign. The office was empty except for an elderly woman behind the counter, reading a romance novel with a bare-chested man on the cover. "Help you?" she asked without looking up. "I need a room. Just for tonight. $65, cash or card." I fumbled for my wallet, praying I had enough. My bank accounts were joint with my parents. They'd freeze them the second they realized I'd run. I had $83 in cash and a credit card that would probably work for another few hours. "Card," I said. She ran it. It went through. I exhaled in relief. "Room 214, second floor, end of the hall. Checkout's at 11. She handed me a key attached to a plastic anchor keychain. "Storm's coming in tonight. Might lose power. There's candles in the nightstand. Thank you." The room was exactly what I expected. Dated floral wallpaper, a sagging double bed, and a bathroom with questionable water pressure. But it was clean. And it was mine, and nobody knew I was here. I collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, and stared at the water-stained ceiling. What had I done? I'd just blown up my entire life. My parents would be furious. Our family would be humiliated. Marcus would probably sue for breach of contract or something equally vindictive. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I hadn't had an appetite before the wedding, and now I was starving. I grabbed my wallet and headed back outside, following the smell of grilled seafood down Main Street. Most of the restaurants looked touristy and overpriced, but there was one at the end of the street that seemed different. A place called Vtorio's, with dark windows and no cutesy nautical decorations. A simple awning, a single door. The kind of establishment that didn't need to advertise because it already knew its worth. I pushed inside. The interior was all dark wood and low lighting, elegant without being pretentious. Leather booths lined the walls, a polished bar stretched along one side, bottles of expensive liquor gleaming like jewels. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. There were only a handful of other diners, all dressed considerably better than I was in Rachel's borrowed sundress. A hostess materialized from the shadows, a stunning woman in a black pencil skirt and crisp white blouse. Her eyes swept over me with thinly veiled disdain. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, I just wanted dinner. We're fully booked." Her tone suggested I should have known better than to walk in off the street. Disappointment crashed over me. Of course they were. I probably looked like a mess anyway. No makeup, tangled hair, yesterday's tears still staining my cheeks. I turned to leave. Wait. The voice came from the bar, deep, accented, commanding without being loud. I turned back. A man sat in the corner booth, partially hidden in shadow. I could only see fragments of him at first. A strong jaw, dark hair swept back from his forehead, the glint of an expensive watch on his wrist. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car, tailored so perfectly it looked like it had been painted onto his body. "She can have the table by the window," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. The hostess's entire demeanor changed. "Of course, Mr. Russo. Right away." She turned to me with a forced smile. "This way, please." I should have left. Something about the way everyone in the restaurant had gone very still. The way the hostess's hands trembled slightly as she grabbed a menu, the way the bartender wouldn't meet my eyes. It all screamed danger, but I was hungry, exhausted, and had nowhere else to go, so I followed her to the table. As I passed the corner booth, I felt him watching me. The weight of his gaze was almost physical, a dark pressure that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I risked a glance in his direction. Our eyes met. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, 32 at most. Devastatingly handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like standing too close to a fire, sharp cheekbones, full lips that curved into the barest hint of a smile, eyes so dark they were almost black, reflecting the candlelight like polished obsidian. And something else. Something predatory. I looked away quickly, my heart hammering. The hostess seated me by the window overlooking the harbor. Through the glass, I could see storm clouds rolling in, turning the sky purple and bruised. Lightning flickered on the horizon. "Your server will be right with you," the hostess said, practically fleeing back to her post. I opened the menu with shaking hands. Everything was written in Italian, with prices that made my stomach drop. The cheapest entree was $42. I had $83 to my name, and I'd just spent $65 of it on the motel room. I was calculating whether I could afford an appetizer and still have enough for gas when a shadow fell across my table. I looked up. It was him. Up close, he was even more striking and more terrifying. He moved with a controlled grace that reminded me of a panther circling prey. 2 men flanked him, both built like brick walls, both wearing dark suits with telltale bulges beneath their jackets. Guns. "You looked lost," he said, his accent coloring the words. Italian. Definitely Italian. "First time at Vtorio's?" "First time in Crescent Bay, actually." My voice came out steadier than I felt. His smile widened fractionally. "Running away from something?" My breath caught. How could he possibly? "Your dress," he continued, gesturing to Rachel's sundress. "It's inside out. The tags are showing. And you keep looking at the door like you expect someone to walk through it." Those dark eyes studied me with unsettling intensity. So, running from an abusive boyfriend? Dangerous ex-husband? Or just a life that didn't fit anymore? I should have lied. Should have made up some innocent story about a spontaneous road trip. Instead, I heard myself say, "A wedding." Interest flickered across his face. "Yours?" "Was supposed to be. And you left." I ran. Silence stretched between us. Outside, thunder rumbled. The first drops of rain spattered against the window. "What's your name?" he asked. "Evelyn. Evie." "Evie." He said it slowly, tasting each syllable. "I'm Dante Russo." He waited, as if the name should mean something to me. When I didn't react, something like amusement crossed his features. "You have no idea who I am." "Should I?" "Most people in this town do." He pulled out the chair across from me and sat without invitation, folding his hands on the table. His bodyguards positioned themselves nearby, eyes constantly scanning the room. "Tell me, Evie, why did you run?" "That's kind of personal. Indulge me." There was something in his voice, a subtle command, that made refusing feel impossible. Or maybe I was just desperate to talk to someone, anyone, who wasn't part of my old life. He was cheating on me, I admitted. Multiple times. And when I confronted him, he acted like it was normal, Expected. Like I should just accept it as part of the arrangement. Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Arrangement. Our families. It was more of a merger than a marriage. I laughed bitterly. I was the commodity being traded. And you decided you were worth more than that. The way he said it, not a question, but a statement of fact, made something in my chest tighten. I decided I'd rather be alone than trapped, I corrected. You're not alone now. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication I didn't fully understand. Rain lashed against the windows in earnest now. The lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. Dante leaned back in his chair, studying me with that same unsettling intensity. Have dinner with me. I can't afford my treat. He raised a hand before I could protest. Consider it a welcome to Crescent Bay. Besides, you look like you haven't eaten in days. He wasn't wrong. And despite every instinct screaming that this man was dangerous, I found myself nodding. What was one dinner? In the morning I'd figure out my next move. Find a job. Start over. Just one dinner with a stranger who looked at me like I was something precious. What could possibly go wrong? Dante snapped his fingers without looking away from me, and within seconds, a waiter appeared at our table, a thin, nervous man who kept his eyes lowered as he took our order. Dante ordered for both of us in rapid Italian, his voice smooth and authoritative. The waiter nodded frantically and disappeared into the kitchen like his life depended on it. You didn't ask what I wanted, I pointed out, trying to sound annoyed rather than intimidated. You can't read the menu, and Alessandro makes the best osso buco on the East Coast. Trust me. I don't know you well enough to trust you. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had reached his eyes. Smart girl. The lights flickered again as the storm intensified outside. Rain hammered against the windows in sheets, turning the view of the harbor into a watercolor blur. Thunder cracked so loudly I jumped. Dante didn't even flinch. So, I said, desperate to fill the silence that felt too heavy, too charged. What do you do? For work, I mean. Import-export. That's vague. It's intentional. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. What about you? What did you do before you ran away from your wedding? Art history degree that I never used. My father got me a position at his investment firm doing, honestly, I'm not even sure. Filing? Looking decorative at client dinners? Being groomed for the perfect corporate wife role? You don't strike me as someone who enjoys being decorative. I don't enjoy being anything my parents decided I should be. The words came out more bitter than I'd intended. Sorry. You probably don't want to hear about my family drama. On the contrary. Dante's gaze never wavered. I find you fascinating. The way he said it made heat creep up my neck. There was something in his eyes, a dark hunger that should have terrified me. Maybe it did. Maybe that's why my pulse was racing. The waiter returned with wine, a bottle that probably cost more than my monthly rent back in New York. Dante poured for both of us with steady hands. I took a sip. It tasted like velvet and cherries and money. This is too expensive, I protested weakly. I own the restaurant. Of course he did. Along with half the town, added one of his bodyguards, the taller one with a scar through his left eyebrow. He'd positioned himself near the door, hand resting casually near his jacket. The other guard watched the kitchen entrance with the same vigilant intensity. Dante shot him a look that could have cut glass. The man went silent. You own half the town? I repeated. What are you, the mayor? The bodyguards exchanged glances. Dante's expression remained neutral, but something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. Something like that. A chill ran down my spine despite the warmth of the wine in my stomach. The way everyone in the restaurant avoided looking at our table. The way the hostess had trembled, the guns under their jackets. Import-export. Owns half the town. I wasn't an idiot. I'd grown up in New York. I knew what those things meant when they were packaged together. You're with the mob, I said quietly. Dante tilted his head, studying me. Does that frighten you? It should. But it doesn't. He was right, and I didn't understand why. Maybe because I'd just escaped one kind of cage, and the danger Dante represented felt honest in a way my old life never had. Marcus had hidden his cruelty behind expensive suits and charity galas. Dante wore his darkness on his sleeve, made no apologies for what he was. "What would frighten me," I said carefully, "is if you expected something in return for dinner. The only thing I expect is your company for the next hour. After that, you're free to leave." He paused. "Unless you choose to stay." "Why would I stay?" "Because you have nowhere else to go. No money, no plan." His voice was gentle but ruthless in its honesty. "And because you're tired of running." The food arrived then. Steaming plates of braised veal so tender it fell apart under my fork. Saffron risotto that melted on my tongue. Vegetables roasted in herbs I couldn't name. It was the best meal I'd ever eaten, and I hated that it was being provided by a man who probably had people killed before breakfast. We ate in silence for a while. The storm raged outside, shaking the windows. The power flickered intermittently but never fully died. "How did you end up here?" I asked eventually. "In Crescent Bay, I mean. You don't exactly seem like a small-town kind of person." "My father was from here, built his empire from nothing." Dante's jaw tightened. "When he died, I inherited everything, including the responsibility of protecting what's mine." Protecting or controlling? Sometimes they're the same thing. I set down my fork. "That's a terrifying philosophy, perhaps." He leaned back, wine glass balanced in his fingers. "But it keeps the people I care about safe. Loyalty is everything in my world, Evie. Betrayal is unforgivable." The way he said that last word sent ice through my veins. I thought of Marcus, of the messages on his phone, of his casual dismissal of fidelity. "My fiancé betrayed me," I heard myself say, "multiple times, and everyone expected me to just accept it. Smile and play the dutiful wife while he—" My voice cracked. Dante's expression darkened. "What's his name? Why?" "Just curious. Marcus Whitmore. Lives in Manhattan." Banker. I laughed humorlessly, though I'm sure by now he's told everyone I'm the one who ruined everything. Probably playing the victim, making it seem like I'm unstable or hysterical. Men like that always do. Dante's voice had gone cold. They gaslight, manipulate, make you question your own reality, make you think you're the problem when they're the ones incapable of basic human decency. The venom in his tone surprised me. "You sound like you've dealt with men like that before." "I've dealt with worse." He finished his wine and poured more. "In my line of work, you learn quickly who deserves loyalty and who deserves a bullet." I should have been horrified, should have stood up and walked out, but something in his words resonated with the anger I'd been swallowing for months. The fury at Marcus's betrayal, the rage at my parents' manipulation, the resentment at a life spent being controlled. "That's a dangerous way to think," I said softly. But, honest, he had me there. Thunder shook the building. The lights went out completely this time, plunging the restaurant into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in after a moment. Dim amber bulbs that cast everything in sepia tones and deep shadows. "Storm must have taken out a transformer," said the scarred bodyguard. "Might be out for hours." Dante stood in one fluid motion. "I'll drive you back to wherever you're staying." "I'm at the Seabreeze Inn. It's only a few blocks. I can walk." "In this?" He gestured to the windows, where rain was coming down so hard it looked like the ocean had declared war on the land. "You'll drown before you make it to the corner." "I'll wait it out." "Evie." The way he said my name stopped me mid-sentence. "Let me drive you. Please." The please surprised me. Men like Dante Russo probably didn't say please very often. I found myself nodding. His car was parked right outside. A black Escalade with windows tinted so dark they were probably illegal. The scarred bodyguard held an umbrella over us as we ran for the vehicle. But the wind was so vicious that we were both soaked within seconds. Dante opened the back door for me, and I slid into leather seats that smelled of expensive cologne and danger. The interior was immaculate. No trash, no personal items, nothing to indicate who owned it, except for the faint scent of gun oil and the way the dashboard had more buttons than a commercial airplane. The other bodyguard took the driver's seat, while Scarface climbed into the passenger side. Dante settled in beside me, water dripping from his hair onto his collar. Even soaked, he was devastating. "The Seabreeze Inn," Dante told his driver, "and take the long way. Roads might be flooded." The engine purred to life, quiet, powerful, predatory. We pulled out of the parking lot into a wall of rain. The windshield wipers worked frantically, but could barely keep up. Lightning illuminated the world in stark white flashes. "You know," I said as we drove, "you never actually confirmed or denied the mob thing." Dante turned to look at me, his face half in shadow. "Would it change anything if I did?" "I don't know. I think you do." He shifted closer, and suddenly the space between us felt non-existent. "You're not afraid of me, Evie. You should be, but you're not. Want to know why?" My breath caught. "Why?" "Because you recognize something in me. The same thing I recognized in you at the restaurant." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "We're both trapped in cages of other people's making. The only difference is that I broke free of mine a long time ago. You're just starting to." His hand rested on the seat between us, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. I should have pulled away, should have put distance between myself and this dangerous, magnetic man who looked at me like I was both salvation and damnation. Instead, I asked, "How did you break free?" "I took what was mine, by force, when necessary, by blood, when unavoidable." He held my gaze. I stopped asking permission to live the life I wanted and started taking it. "That's not freedom. That's just a different kind of cage, is it?" He leaned in, and I could smell rain and wine, and something darker, more intoxicating. "Or is it the only real freedom there is? The freedom to choose your own chains?" The car hit a pothole, throwing me against him. His arm came up instinctively, steadying me. For a moment, we stayed like that, my hand pressed against his chest, his arm around my waist, faces inches apart. I could feel his heartbeat under my palm. Steady. Strong. Completely controlled even as something wild and dangerous burned in his eyes. "We're here, boss," the driver announced, breaking the spell. I pulled back, cheeks burning. Through the rain-streaked windows, I could see the flickering neon sign of the Seabreeze Inn. "Thank you," I managed, "for dinner, and the ride." "Evie." Dante caught my wrist as I reached for the door handle. His grip was firm but not painful. "Do you have money? A plan?" "I'll figure something out." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." He studied me for a long moment, then released my wrist and reached into his jacket. I tensed, half expecting a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a business card, matte black with silver lettering. "My private number," he said, pressing it into my hand. "If you need anything, and I mean anything, call me." "I can't accept—" "You can. You will." His tone left no room for argument. Crescent Bay is a small town, Evie. Word travels fast. By tomorrow, everyone will know there's a new girl staying at the Seabreeze. Some will be curious. Some will be less friendly. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to protect you. Why? You don't even know me. Something fierce and possessive flashed across his face. I know enough. Before I could respond, he leaned forward and opened my door. Rain and wind howled into the car. "Go, before the storm gets worse." I stepped out into the deluge, the business card clutched in my fist. As I ran for the motel entrance, I glanced back. Dante was watching me through the window, his expression unreadable in the darkness. The Escalade didn't pull away until I was safely inside. My room was dark, the power still out. I fumbled for the candles the motel owner had mentioned, found them in the nightstand drawer, and lit 3 with shaking hands. Flickering light pushed back the shadows. I collapsed onto the bed, still dripping wet, and stared at Dante's business card. Just a name. Just a number. Nothing else. I should throw it away. Should forget about the dark-eyed man who'd bought me dinner and looked at me like I was something precious and terrifying all at once. Instead, I tucked it into my wallet, lay back against the pillows, and listened to the storm rage outside while my heart raged inside. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd figure out my life, find a job, start over. Tomorrow. But tonight, I'd dream of shadows and danger, and a man whose darkness called to something broken inside me. The candles burned lower, the storm screamed against the windows, and somewhere in the night, I could have sworn I heard the rumble of an engine idling in the parking lot, keeping watch. I woke to silence and sunlight streaming through threadbare curtains. The storm had passed, leaving behind that peculiar stillness that follows violence. Air scrubbed clean, world holding its breath. My phone, which I'd retrieved from the back seat and plugged in before collapsing into bed, buzzed insistently on the nightstand. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages. I scrolled through them with a detached sort of fascination, like reading about someone else's life. My mother's messages evolved from concerned to furious to threatening. My father's were shorter, more pointed. Come home immediately. We'll discuss your behavior. Marcus had sent only one. You humiliated me. You'll regret this. The implied threat made my stomach clench, but I deleted it along with all the others. I had $18 left. The motel checkout was in 3 hours. I needed a plan. The shower sputtered lukewarm water that smelled faintly of rust, but I stood under it anyway, letting it wash away yesterday's fear and confusion. When I emerged, wrapped in a towel that had seen better decades, I caught my reflection in the foggy mirror. I looked different. Younger somehow, despite the exhaustion shadowing my eyes. Like I'd shed a skin I'd been wearing for 23 years, and was only now seeing what lay underneath. My only clothes were Rachel's black sundress, now wrinkled and salt-stained from last night's storm. I put it on anyway, finger-combed my damp hair, and ventured outside. Crescent Bay looked different in daylight, less mysterious, more worn around the edges. The storm had left debris scattered across the streets, broken tree branches, overturned trash cans, a child's bicycle lying in a puddle. Shop owners were sweeping water from their doorways, assessing damage. The harbor was calm now, fishing boats swaying gently at their moorings. I walked toward Main Street, hoping to find a help wanted sign somewhere, anywhere. The local diner had a faded notice in the window. Waitress needed. Apply within. It wasn't much, but it was something. The interior smelled of coffee and bacon grease. A handful of locals occupied the booths, their conversations dying the moment I walked in. Eyes tracked me as I approached the counter where a hard-looking woman with dyed red hair was wiping down the formica. "Help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting I was already an inconvenience. "I saw your sign. About the waitress position." She looked me up and down with unconcealed skepticism. "You got experience?" "Some." A lie. I'd never worked a day of real labor in my life. "I'm a fast learner." "Where are you from?" "New York." "What brings you to Crescent Bay?" "Fresh start." She snorted. "Yeah, that's what they all say." But she pulled out an application from under the counter and slapped it down in front of me. "Fill this out. We'll call you if we're interested." I took it to an empty booth, borrowed a pen from a fisherman at the next table, and began writing. Name, previous employment, references. Each blank felt like an indictment of how unprepared I was for real life. I'd never had to apply for anything. Positions had always been handed to me, carefully curated by my parents. I was halfway through when the bell above the door chimed. The diner went quiet. I looked up. Dante Russo stood in the doorway, flanked by his 2 bodyguards. He wore a different suit today, charcoal gray, almost black, perfectly tailored to his frame. His dark hair was slicked back, still damp from a shower. Those obsidian eyes scanned the room with predatory efficiency before landing on me. Something hot and terrifying coiled in my chest. He crossed the diner in long strides, his men positioning themselves strategically near the exits. The other customers suddenly found their plates fascinating. The red-haired woman behind the counter paled. "Mr. Russo," she stammered. "Didn't expect to see you this morning. Can I get you coffee, black?" He slid into the booth across from me without invitation. "And whatever she's having." "I haven't ordered yet," I said, proud that my voice didn't shake. "Then order." It felt less like a suggestion and more like a command. I glanced at the menu scrawled on a chalkboard above the counter. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. The woman scurried away like her life depended on it. "You're following me," I said once we were alone, or as alone as we could be with 2 armed bodyguards and a dozen eavesdropping locals. Crescent Bay is a small town. There's only one diner. Dante leaned back, arm stretched across the back of the booth. "Though I did hear you were asking about employment. How could you possibly—" I stopped. "You have people watching me. I have people watching everyone. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to keep you safe. I don't need your protection." His eyes darkened. "You have $18 to your name, no job, and an ex-fiancé who sent you a threatening text message at 6:43 this morning. Yes, Evie, you need protection." Ice flooded my veins. "You hacked my phone? I made sure you were safe. That's the same thing." "No," he said quietly, dangerously. "It's not. Safety and privacy are luxuries people in your situation can't afford." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Your ex-fiancé has already hired a private investigator. Your parents have frozen your bank accounts, and your mother called the police to report you as a missing person, though they told her you're an adult who left of your own free will." My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the table to hide it. "How do you know all this?" "Because I made it my business to know." His gaze held mine, relentless. "Did you really think you could run away from a life like yours without consequences? People like your family don't just let their investments disappear. I'm not an investment. I'm a person. To them, you're both." The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. He was right. God help me. He was right. The waitress returned with our food, setting it down with trembling hands before fleeing back to the safety of the counter. The coffee was bitter and burnt, but I drank it anyway, needing something to do with my hands. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally. Dante cut into his eggs with precise movements. "I want to offer you a job." "Doing what?" "I need someone to manage the gallery." "What gallery?" "The one I'm opening next month. Art gallery. High-end pieces, local artists, some international work." He took a bite, chewed, swallowed. "You have an art history degree. You understand the world you came from, the wealthy collectors, the social dynamics, how to make people feel sophisticated while separating them from their money. You'd be perfect." It was too convenient, too perfect, too much like a trap disguised as salvation. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because I can. Because you need it. Because—" He paused, something flickering across his face too quickly to read. "Because I want to. And what do you expect in return?" "Loyalty." The word hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. "Work for me. Don't betray me. Don't run to your family or your ex-fiancé. Give me your trust, and I'll give you safety, a life, freedom to become whoever you want to be without them controlling you." "That's not freedom. That's just trading one cage for another." "Maybe." He set down his fork, gave me his full attention. "But this cage comes with a key. You can leave whenever you want. I won't stop you. But while you're here, while you work for me, no one touches you. No one threatens you. No one makes you feel small or worthless, or like you're only valuable as someone's possession." My throat tightened. "You don't know me well enough to make those promises." "I know enough." His voice dropped, intimate despite the public setting. "I know you'd rather starve than go back to a man who cheated on you. I know you walked away from wealth and status because you refused to compromise your dignity. I know you're sitting here filling out an application for minimum wage work when you could call your father and end this with one phone conversation." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. "I know you're stronger than you think you are. And I know that strength is worth protecting." Heat radiated from where his skin touched mine. Every instinct screamed danger, but beneath it was something else. A desperate, aching need to believe someone saw value in me beyond what I could provide or represent. When would I start? The words escaped before I could stop them. Satisfaction gleamed in his eyes. "Today, I'll have Marco drive you to the gallery space. You can assess what needs to be done. Start planning the opening. Salary is $75,000 a year, plus housing." "Housing?" "I own several properties. You can't stay at the Sea Breeze indefinitely." He pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly. "There's a furnished apartment above the gallery. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, ocean view. It's yours. $75,000, an apartment. A job using my actual education. It was more than I dared hope for when I woke up this morning with $18 and no prospects. It was also too good to be true. What's the catch? I asked. No catch. Just loyalty. And if I break that loyalty? His expression went cold, absolutely arctic. Then you'll learn why people in this town are afraid of me. A smart woman would have walked away. Would have taken her chances with the diner job and a motel room. Would have recognized the darkness in Dante Russo and run as far and fast as possible. But I'd spent my entire life being smart. Being careful. Being exactly what everyone expected. And where had it gotten me? Okay, I heard myself say. I'll do it. Dante smiled. A real smile this time, not the practiced curve of lips, but something genuine and almost boyish. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less dangerous, almost human. Good. He stood, pulling out his wallet and dropping $100 bill on the table for a meal that couldn't have cost more than $20. Marco will drive you to the gallery. I have business to attend to, but I'll check in later. What kind of business? The kind you don't need to worry about. He walked away before I could respond, his bodyguards falling into formation around him. The diner remained silent until his Escalade pulled away from the curb. Then the whispers started. Urgent, speculative, afraid. The red-haired waitress approached my booth cautiously. You know what you're doing, honey. Not even a little bit. She shook her head. Dante Russo is dangerous. People who get close to him tend to either end up very rich or very dead. Sometimes both. Which were you hoping for when you served him coffee? She flinched. Fair point. She picked up the $100 bill, studied it like it might bite her. But you seem like a nice girl. Naive, but nice. So let me give you some free advice. Don't fall in love with him. Men like Dante Russo don't love. They possess, they consume. And when they're done with you, there's nothing left. She walked away before I could tell her I had no intention of falling in love with anyone, much less a mob boss who'd invaded my privacy and bought my loyalty like he bought everything else. But as I walked out of the diner into the bright morning sunlight, I touched my wallet where his business card still rested, and I wondered if I was lying to myself. Marco, the scarred bodyguard from last night, was waiting outside in a black sedan. He opened the door for me with surprising courtesy. Gallery's 10 minutes away, Miss Ashford, he said. His voice was gravelly, like he'd spent years smoking cigarettes and screaming orders. Boss says to give you the full tour, answer any questions you got. Is this what you do? Drive people around? Among other things. His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. But mostly, I keep Mr. Russo alive. And now, I keep you alive too. Why would I need keeping alive? Because you matter to him. And anything that matters to Dante Russo automatically has a target on its back. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. We drove through Crescent Bay's winding streets, past the harbor, and up into the hills where the houses got bigger and the views more spectacular. The gallery occupied a converted Victorian mansion overlooking the ocean. 3 stories of pristine white clapboard with wraparound porches and enormous windows. It was stunning. Boss bought it 6 months ago, Marco explained as he unlocked the front door. Had it completely renovated. Original hardwood floors, climate control for the art, security system that could protect Fort Knox. Your apartment's on the 3rd floor. Want to see it first? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The apartment was beautiful. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Atlantic like a living painting. The furniture was minimal, but expensive. A cream-colored sofa, a glass dining table, a bed with white linens that looked like clouds. The kitchen had granite countertops and appliances that probably cost more than my first car. Boss had it furnished yesterday, Marco said. After he met you. Yesterday. He'd bought furniture and prepared an apartment for me less than 12 hours after meeting me in a restaurant. Why? I whispered. Marco's scarred face softened almost imperceptibly. Because he saw something in you worth protecting. And Dante Russo always protects what's his. What's his. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they felt like a promise. I spent the rest of the day exploring the gallery, taking notes on my phone, sketching out ideas for the opening. The space was extraordinary. High ceilings with crown molding, natural light flooding through tall windows, walls painted in soft, neutral tones that would make any artwork shine. Someone with impeccable taste had overseen the renovation. Marco stationed himself near the front entrance, silent but present, occasionally answering his phone in terse Italian. I tried not to think about what those conversations might entail. By late afternoon, I'd filled a dozen pages with plans. Lighting adjustments, display configurations, a list of local artists to contact. I was so absorbed that I didn't hear the door open until a woman's voice cut through my concentration. "So you're the new girl." I turned. She stood in the doorway like she owned it, tall, willowy, with jet black hair cascading over her shoulders and eyes like green glass. Her dress probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and she wore it with the casual confidence of someone who'd never questioned her place in the world. She was also staring at me with undisguised hostility. "I'm Evelyn," I said, setting down my notebook. "Can I help you?" "Valentina Castellano." She stepped inside, heels clicking against the hardwood. "Dante's fiancé." The word hit me like a punch to the stomach. Fiancé. Of course. A man like Dante Russo would have someone beautiful and polished and probably from the same dark world he inhabited. "He didn't mention—" I started. "I'm sure he didn't." Valentina circled me slowly, predatory. "Dante has a habit of forgetting to mention me when there's something new and shiny to distract him, and you, darling, are very shiny." "I'm just managing the gallery. Of course you are." Her smile was all teeth, just like the last girl was just his personal assistant, and the one before that was just helping with his legitimate business ventures. She stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Expensive, cloying, suffocating. "Let me make something very clear, Evelyn. Dante belongs to me. We've been together for 5 years. Our families have alliances that go back generations. Whatever fantasy he sold you about freedom and fresh starts, it ends the moment he gets bored, which he always does." Something hot and defiant flared in my chest. "I'm not interested in Dante romantically." "Liar." She laughed, brittle and sharp. "I saw how he looked at you last night at Vtorio's. Everyone did. That obsessive, possessive look he gets when he finds a new toy." Her expression hardened. "But here's what you don't understand about men like Dante Russo. They don't see people as people. They see acquisitions, possessions. Things to own and control and discard when the novelty wears off." "Sounds like you're speaking from experience." Her hand moved so fast I barely registered it before her palm connected with my cheek. The slap echoed through the empty gallery like a gunshot. Pain bloomed across my face, hot and stinging. Marco was there in an instant, gun drawn, body positioned between Valentina and me. "Step back, Miss Castellano, or what?" She sneered at him. "You'll shoot me? Dante's future wife? I'd love to see how that conversation goes." "Step back." Marco's voice was arctic. Valentina held up her hands in mock surrender, but her eyes never left mine. "This isn't over, sweetheart. Enjoy your gallery and your little apartment and whatever illusions Dante's given you. But remember, when he's done playing savior, you'll be back to having nothing, and I'll still be here." She swept out as dramatically as she'd entered, leaving silence and the taste of blood in her mouth where I'd bitten my lip. "You okay?" Marco asked, holstering his weapon. I touched my burning cheek. "She's really his fiancée?" Marco's expression grew carefully neutral. "It's complicated. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you." Before I could press him further, his phone buzzed. He answered it, listened, then turned to me. "Boss wants to see you. Now." "Where?" "His house." We drove for 20 minutes into the hills beyond town, where the houses gave way to estates hidden behind iron gates and tall hedges. Marco pulled up to a security gate, spoke briefly into an intercom, and the bars swung open to reveal a long driveway lined with cypress trees. Dante's house sat at the end, like something from a movie, modern architecture of glass and steel and sharp angles, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It was beautiful and cold, and somehow perfectly him. Marco led me through the front entrance into a foyer with marble floors and a chandelier that probably cost more than my parents' house. Everything was precise, expensive, devoid of personal touches. It felt more like a museum than a home. "He's in his office, third door on the left." Marco nodded down a hallway, then positioned himself by the front door. I walked down the corridor on shaking legs, past abstract art and empty rooms, until I reached the indicated door. It was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I could hear Dante's voice, speaking rapid Italian into a phone. He sounded angry. I knocked softly. "Come in." He stood behind a massive desk, still holding his phone but not speaking into it anymore. He'd removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and scattered with scars. His tie was loosened, top button undone. He looked dangerous and domestic all at once. Then his eyes landed on my face, and everything changed. "Who touched you?" His voice was deadly quiet. I'd forgotten about the mark Valentina's slap must have left. My hand went automatically to my cheek. "It's nothing." "Who touched you?" Not a question. A demand. "Your fiancé." Something terrifying flickered across his expression. A darkness so absolute it made my breath catch. He set down his phone with deliberate care, walked around the desk, and stopped inches from me. "Let me see." It wasn't a request. I tilted my face up. His fingers brushed my cheek with surprising gentleness, tracing the edges of the swelling. Heat radiated from his touch, making my pulse race. "Valentina did this," he said flatly. "She said—" I swallowed hard. "She said she's your fiancé, that you've been together for 5 years, that I'm just another in a long line of distractions." "And you believed her. Should I?" Dante's jaw clenched. He turned away, bracing his hands on the desk. For a long moment he said nothing, just stood there radiating barely controlled fury. "Valentina Castellano is the daughter of my father's oldest ally," he said finally. "When I was 18 and stupid, our families arranged an engagement. A strategic alliance to strengthen ties between our organizations." He turned back to face me. "I called it off 3 years ago." "She seems to think you're still engaged." "Valentina thinks a lot of things that aren't true, including that she has any claim on me whatsoever." His eyes bored into mine. "I am not engaged. I am not in a relationship. And I sure as hell am not going to let her put her hands on you again." The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my stomach. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "Handle it." He pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly. "Marco will take you back to your apartment. Don't go anywhere alone for the next few days. I'm assigning someone to watch your place." "That's not necessary. Evie." He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, cupping my uninjured cheek. "Valentina is dangerous. She has resources, connections, and a vindictive streak a mile wide. She will hurt you to get to me, and I will not allow that." "Why do you care so much?" The question hung between us. His thumb traced my jawline, and I watched something shift behind his eyes. Desire warring with control, possession fighting rationality. "Because you're mine to protect now," he said simply. "And I protect what's mine." There was that word again. Mine. "I'm not your possession. No." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You're something far more dangerous than that." "What?" He leaned in close enough that I could feel his breath against my lips. "You're the first thing in 10 years that's made me want something beyond power and revenge. And that, cara mia, terrifies me more than any enemy I've ever faced." His lips brushed mine, not quite a kiss, more like a promise. Then he pulled back, leaving me dizzy and aching. "Go home, Evie. Lock your doors, and don't open them for anyone but Marco or me." I left in a daze, my lips still tingling from that almost kiss. Marco was waiting in the foyer, keys in hand. We drove back to the gallery in silence, but I caught him watching me in the rearview mirror, with something that might have been sympathy. "He doesn't do this, you know," Marco said, as we pulled up outside the gallery. "Care about people. The last person he cared about was his sister, and she—" He stopped abruptly. "What happened to her?" "Not my story to tell." He got out, opened my door. "But I will tell you this. Dante Russo is a dangerous man. He's killed people, destroyed families, built an empire on blood and fear. But with the people he cares about, he'd burn the whole world down to keep them safe. So if he says you're under his protection, you are, completely. And anyone who tries to hurt you will answer to him." He walked me to my apartment door, checked the rooms to make sure they were empty, then stationed himself outside. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, my mind spinning. What had I gotten myself into? I spent the evening unpacking the few belongings I'd bought with the money Dante had advanced me. Clothes, toiletries, basic necessities. The apartment slowly began to feel less like a stage set and more like a home. I made pasta for dinner using the absurdly well-stocked kitchen, ate it while watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Sleep well, cara mia. Tomorrow we begin turning your gallery dreams into reality, D. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. How did you get this number? His response was immediate. I have all your numbers. Sleep. You're safe. I should have been angry about the invasion of privacy. Instead, I felt something warm and dangerous unfurl in my chest. I climbed into bed as full darkness fell, listening to the ocean and the occasional murmur of Marco's voice as he spoke to someone on his phone. Exhaustion pulled at me, but sleep was elusive. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dante's face inches from mine, felt his thumb tracing my jaw, heard his voice calling me something dangerous. Somewhere around midnight, I heard a car pull up outside. Footsteps. A quiet conversation between Marco and someone else. Then silence. I got up, crept to the window, and looked down. Dante's Escalade was parked on the street below, engine idling. Through the tinted windows, I could just make out his silhouette in the back seat. He was watching my apartment, making sure I was safe. The possessiveness should have frightened me. The obsessive attention should have sent me running. But as I crawled back into bed, I felt safer than I had in years. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. I woke to pounding on my door and Marco's urgent voice. Miss Ashford, you need to see this. I stumbled out of bed, pulled on a robe, and opened the door. Marco stood there with his phone extended, his expression grim. It's all over the news, he said. I took the phone. The screen showed a news article from a major New York outlet. Investment banker Marcus Whitmore arrested in fraud scheme. My hands shook as I read. Marcus had been taken into custody early this morning on charges of embezzlement, securities fraud, and money laundering. The article detailed a sophisticated scheme involving offshore accounts and falsified documents. Federal investigators had been building a case for months. The arraignment was set for this afternoon. How? I started. But then I knew. Dante. Marco's expression confirmed it. Boss has resources everywhere. When you told him what your ex did to you, he made some calls. Turned out Mr. Whitmore had been sloppy with more than just his personal life. Did Dante plant evidence? Didn't need to. Your ex was already guilty. Boss just made sure the right people found the proof. I sat down heavily on the couch, the phone still in my hand. Marcus was going to prison. My parents would be implicated in the scandal. They'd invested heavily in his firm. The family reputation they'd valued above my happiness was about to be destroyed, and Dante had done it in less than 24 hours. He did this for me, I whispered. He did this because someone hurt you, and Dante Russo doesn't let that go unpunished. Marco took his phone back. Boss wants to know if you're okay. I thought about Marcus in handcuffs. About my mother's face when she learned what had happened. About my father's carefully constructed world crumbling around him. I thought about Valentina's slap, and Dante's cold fury, and the way he'd called me something dangerous. Tell him, I said slowly, that I'm more than okay. Marco smiled, a rare, genuine expression. He'll be pleased to hear that. As he left, I walked to the window and looked out at the ocean. The morning sun turned the water into liquid gold. Seabirds wheeled overhead. The world looked new, scrubbed clean by yesterday's storm. And somewhere in this beautiful, dangerous town, a man who barely knew me had just destroyed my enemies without being asked. I touched my lips, remembering that almost kiss. Maybe the cage Dante offered wasn't a cage at all. Maybe it was a kingdom, and maybe I was ready to be his queen. 3 weeks passed in a blur of gallery preparations, stolen glances, and a tension that built like a storm gathering strength over the ocean. Dante visited the gallery every day, sometimes in the morning, sometimes late at night after whatever dark business kept him occupied. He never stayed long, but his presence filled the space like smoke, impossible to ignore even after he left. We didn't talk about the almost kiss. We didn't talk about Marcus's arrest or my parents' subsequent financial collapse, or the way Dante's eyes followed me whenever he thought I wasn't looking. We talked about art and lighting, and which wines to serve at the opening. We talked about everything except what was happening between us. Valentina hadn't approached me again, but I saw her sometimes, at Vtorio's, at the harbor, always watching with those cold green eyes. Marco assured me she'd been handled, whatever that meant. I didn't ask for details. The gallery opening was set for Friday night. I'd worked 18-hour days curating pieces from local artists, arranging lighting, coordinating catering. The space had transformed from an empty shell into something magical. Paintings glowing under carefully positioned spotlights, sculptures casting dramatic shadows, everything positioned to create a journey through the space. It was my vision made real. My creation. And I was terrified. Thursday afternoon, I was adjusting the placement of a bronze sculpture when Dante appeared beside me, silent as always. I'd stopped jumping at his sudden arrivals, though my heart still raced whenever he was near. "You've done extraordinary work," he said, studying the gallery with genuine appreciation. "This is better than I imagined. You had pretty low expectations then." I had very high expectations. He turned those dark eyes on me. "You exceeded them." The praise shouldn't have meant so much. But coming from him, a man who controlled an empire, who commanded absolute loyalty, who probably didn't give compliments unless they were earned, it made my chest tight with something I didn't want to examine too closely. "Thank you," I managed. "For this, for everything, you earned it." He stepped closer, and suddenly the gallery felt too small, too warm. "There's something I need to tell you about tomorrow night." My stomach clenched. "What?" "Valentina will be there. I can't exclude her without causing problems with her father, but I've made it clear that if she so much as looks at you wrong, there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" His expression went cold. "The permanent kind." I should have been horrified, should have protested that violence wasn't the answer, but I'd grown up in the past 3 weeks. I'd learned what it meant to live in Dante's world, where loyalty was currency, and betrayal was paid for in blood. "I can handle Valentina," I said. "I know you can." His hand came up, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was intimate, possessive. "But you shouldn't have to. You should be able to enjoy tomorrow night without worrying about vindictive exes." Speaking of exes, I heard Marcus took a plea deal, 20 years. 23, with no possibility of parole for 15. Dante's voice held satisfaction. "He'll have plenty of time to think about how he treated you." "My parents think I had something to do with it. My mother called yesterday. Said I'd destroyed the family." "What did you tell her?" "That she destroyed the family the moment she tried to sell me to a criminal." I looked up at him. Then I hung up. First time I've ever done that. Pride flickered across his face. How did it feel? Terrifying. Liberating. Like jumping off a cliff and discovering I could fly. "You can." His thumb traced my jawline, the same gesture from weeks ago that still made my breath catch. "You can do anything, Evie. You're stronger than you know." The moment stretched between us, charged with 3 weeks of unresolved tension. His hand cupped my face, and I leaned into it without thinking. His eyes darkened, pupils dilating. "Dante," I started. "Boss." Marco's voice cut through the moment like a knife. He stood in the doorway, phone in hand, expression urgent. "We have a problem." Dante's hand dropped. His entire demeanor shifted from intimate to lethal in a heartbeat. "What kind of problem?" "The Castellano kind. Her father wants a meeting. Tonight. Says it's urgent." A muscle in Dante's jaw ticked. "Tell him I'll be there in an hour." He turned back to me. "I have to go. But tomorrow night, we need to talk." "About what?" "About this." He gestured between us. "About what happens next." He left before I could respond. Marco and his other guards falling into formation around him. The gallery felt cavernous without him, empty despite the art covering every wall. I worked until midnight, making final adjustments, obsessing over details, when I finally climbed the stairs to my apartment. Exhaustion dragged at my bones, but I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow was the opening. Tomorrow was everything I'd worked for. Tomorrow, Dante and I would finally talk about whatever this dangerous, terrifying thing between us was becoming. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke to my phone ringing. The clock read 3:17 a.m. Unknown number. I answered groggily. Hello? Evelyn Ashford? A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped. Yes? This is Crescent Bay Memorial Hospital. Dante Russo was brought in an hour ago with multiple gunshot wounds. He's listed you as his emergency contact. We need you to come immediately. The world tilted sideways. What? How? Ma'am, please come now. It's critical. I threw on clothes with shaking hands, ran down the stairs, found Marco's replacement, a man named Tony, stationed outside the hospital. Now. He didn't ask questions, just got me into the car and drove like the devil himself was chasing us. The 15-minute drive took 7. I ran through the emergency room doors in bare feet, having forgotten shoes entirely. A doctor intercepted me. Miss Ashford? I'm Dr. Patterson. Mr. Russo is in surgery. He was shot 3 times. Shoulder, abdomen, and thigh. He's lost a lot of blood. Is he going to die? We're doing everything we can. Which wasn't an answer. They led me to a private waiting room, where 6 men in dark suits stood like sentries. I recognized some. Marco, Tony, others I'd seen around the gallery. They all looked shell-shocked, an emotion I'd never associated with these dangerous men. What happened? I demanded. Marco's scarred face was pale. Ambush. After the meeting with Castellano, they were waiting when we left. His hands clenched into fists. Boss pushed me out of the way, took bullets meant for me. Who did this? Working theory is Valentina. She has connections, mercenaries who don't care about family alliances. She found out about the gallery opening, realized Dante wasn't going to marry her, decided if she couldn't have him, nobody could. Cold rage flooded through me. Where is she? Being dealt with. Marco's expression was granite, but right now, all that matters is the boss pulling through. Hours crawled past. Dawn broke over the ocean, painting the waiting room in shades of pink and gold. Nurses came and went with updates that revealed nothing. Still in surgery, still critical, still fighting. I paced the small room like a caged animal, wearing a path in the linoleum. This man, this dangerous, possessive, protective man who'd given me a life when I had nothing, couldn't die, wouldn't die. I wouldn't allow it. At 7:30, Dr. Patterson returned. His scrubs were stained with blood. He's out of surgery, the doctor said. It was touch and go, but he's stable. The next 24 hours are critical, but if he makes it through, when can I see him? I interrupted. He's in recovery. Probably another hour before. I don't care. Take me to him. Now. Something in my voice made the doctor nod. He led me through a maze of corridors to a private room at the end of the ICU ward. Guards flanked the door. They let me pass without question. Dante lay in the hospital bed, unconscious, hooked up to more machines than I could count. His face was pale, bruised. Bandages covered his shoulder and torso. He looked smaller somehow, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. I pulled a chair next to the bed and took his hand, the one without an IV, in both of mine. You don't get to die, I told him fiercely. Do you hear me, Dante Russo? You promised to protect me, and you can't do that if you're dead. So you're going to fight. You're going to survive. And when you wake up, we're going to have that talk you mentioned about what happens next, about this thing between us that terrifies us both. His fingers twitched in mine, maybe coincidence, maybe not. I stayed there all day, leaving only when nurses forced me out for procedures. Marco brought me food I didn't eat. Coffee I drank mechanically. The gallery opening came and went. Marco and Tony handled it, opening the doors, managing the crowd, making excuses for Dante's absence and mine. I didn't care about any of it. At some point during the second night, Dante's eyes opened. Groggy, confused, but aware. They found me immediately. Evie, he rasped. I'm here. I squeezed his hand. You're okay. You're going to be okay. Valentina. Being handled. Don't worry about her. His grip on my hand tightened with surprising strength. Not leaving you. Can't leave you. You're not leaving me. You're right here. No. His eyes burned with feverish intensity. Never leaving. You're mine. Mine to protect. Mine to... He stopped, searching for words through the pain medication fog. Yours to what? Love. The word came out broken, desperate. Mine to love, if you'll let me. Tears I didn't know I'd been holding back spilled over. You're delirious. No. He pulled me closer with the hand I was holding, until my face was inches from his. Been falling for you since that first night. Since you walked into my restaurant looking lost and fierce, and so damn beautiful I couldn't breathe. Tried to fight it. Tried to tell myself it was just possession, just the need to protect something fragile. But it's more. You're more. Dante. Let me finish. Each word seemed to cost him. I'm not a good man, Evie. I've done terrible things, hurt people, destroyed lives. My world is dark and dangerous, and you deserve so much better. But I'm also selfish enough to want you anyway. To need you. To love you so completely that the thought of losing you nearly stopped my heart before the bullets could. I was crying openly now. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because I'm already terrified of how much I feel for you. Because you're right. I should run from you, from this life, from everything you represent. But I can't. Because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, you stopped being the dangerous man who saved me and became the person I can't imagine living without. His smile was weak but genuine. So stay. Build your gallery. Live in this town. Let me love you the only way I know how. Completely, possessively, with everything I am. That's not healthy. No. He brought my hand to his lips, kissed my knuckles. But it's honest. It's real. And it's yours if you want it. I thought about the life I'd left behind. The cage of expectations. The loveless marriage. The slow suffocation of being someone's possession rather than someone's partner. I thought about what Valentina and the waitress had warned me about. That Dante Russo consumed what he loved. Left nothing behind. But looking at him now, bruised and bleeding and barely conscious but still fighting to tell me he loved me, I realized they'd been wrong. Dante didn't consume. He protected. He cherished. He gave everything he had to the people he cared about, even when it meant taking bullets for them. Ask me, I said. What? Ask me properly. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Despite the pain, despite the medications, a real smile curved his lips. Evie Ashford. Will you stay with me? Not because you need protection, or a job, or a place to live, but because you want to? Because you love me too? Yes. The word came out stronger than I felt. Yes to all of it. The darkness and the danger and the possessive, overprotective man who somehow sees me as something precious. Yes. He pulled me down. Or maybe I leaned in, and our lips met. Not an almost kiss this time, but the real thing. Soft and desperate and tasting of blood and promises, and a future neither of us had planned, but both of us wanted. When we broke apart, his eyes were already drifting shut again. Love you, cara mia, he murmured. My dangerous, beautiful girl, love you too, I whispered back. My impossible, terrifying man. He slipped back into sleep, but this time his expression was peaceful. I settled back into the chair, his hand still in mine, and watched the sunrise paint the walls gold. 6 weeks later, I stood in the gallery at the rescheduled grand opening. The space glowed with soft light, filled with well-dressed patrons admiring art and sipping champagne. It was everything I'd dreamed of, and more. Dante stood beside me, his arm around my waist, possessive, protective, perfect. He'd recovered faster than the doctors predicted, driven by sheer stubbornness and the need to be back at my side. The scars would fade eventually, but I secretly loved them. Proof that he'd survived. Proof that we'd both survived. Valentina Castellano had disappeared. Marco wouldn't tell me what happened, and I'd learned not to ask. Some things in Dante's world were better left unknown. My parents had tried to contact me a few times, but their messages went unanswered. I'd mourned that relationship, then let it go. Some cages you had to leave behind completely to be truly free. Happy? Dante murmured in my ear. I looked around the gallery, my gallery, filled with life and art and possibility. Then I looked at him, this dangerous man who'd given me everything, including his heart. Terrified, I admitted, and happier than I've ever been. Good. He pressed a kiss to my temple. Terror means you're alive, and happy means you're exactly where you're supposed to be. A guest approached wanting to discuss one of the paintings, and I excused myself with a squeeze of Dante's hand. As I explained the artist's technique and vision, I caught him watching me with that intense, possessive gaze that still made my pulse race. Some people might call what we had toxic, unhealthy, a darkness masquerading as love, but they didn't understand. They didn't know what it was like to be truly seen by someone, to be protected so fiercely that they'd take bullets for you, to be loved so completely that the word mine stopped being possession and became devotion. I'd run from one cage and found another. But this one had a key I held myself. This one was built on honesty rather than lies, passion rather than duty, choice rather than obligation. This cage was freedom, and I'd never felt more alive. The gallery hummed with conversation and laughter. Outside, the ocean crashed against the cliffs in eternal rhythm. And in this perfect moment, with art surrounding me and love supporting me, and a future stretching bright before me, I finally understood what it meant to be home. Not a place, not a house, not a town, but a person. And that person was watching me from across the room with eyes like midnight and a smile that promised forever. I smiled back. And in that smile was every answer to every question we'd never needed to ask. We'd both been running from cages, but we'd found each other instead. And that made all the difference.